Time to quench the Fire Knight. Hey everyone, Bront CatHerder here. We're having fun talking Fire Knight and dealing with Raid Shadow Legends. So, Hard Fire Knight in particular is one of the more difficult bosses in the game, has some of the better gear that you're looking for as well. It's got your Savage gear that you're looking for, your Regeneration gear, and honestly, there's several other sets in there that are highly useful, especially in the end game. And Hard Fire Knight is one of the harder of the basic dungeons that we come across as well. You've got the Ice Golem, you've got the Dragon, you've got Spider, but Hard Fire Knight has a lot of mechanics working for it and can be very, very difficult. So let's take a quick look at the floors that you may be farming in Hard Fire Knight and see what we can build for that. The stats per floor. Floor 2 is very similar to what you're looking at floor 25 of the normal Fire Knight. It's about speed 110. You're looking around your 250-ish accuracy, your 250-ish or 350-ish resistance is what you're looking for. Little higher, but not too much. And speeds are very, very accessible, so it's not too difficult. And you're only talking about a 15 hit shield. Now that's compared to the 12 hit shield of 25, so it is still a harder boss, but it's not as bad as it could be. The tricks there are mostly getting used to how to control the turn meter if you're going to control the turn meter, or simply how to get around to breaking through the shield to do some damage pretty quickly. Floor 6, where it starts getting a little bit tougher, speed goes up to about 150, so he's, 40% faster than he used to be. The accuracy and the resistance goes up, so you're getting close to needing that 300 accuracy. 285 should be good enough, but honestly 300 is a little bit better. Same with the resistance being close to 400 to be able to resist on those floors there. Keep in mind that the floors are also faster as well, which is why these numbers are harder to hit. But ultimately, it's the boss that's really the fastest on there. Floor 8, I put in floor 8 there because floor 9 is not really worth farming because floor 9 has a Kyoku in it, which means that if you're not careful or you're not 100%, you can actually have that Kyoku put up unkillable and then you'll be stuck on that floor. And as long as there's even a 3% chance of that happening, that is a 3% guaranteed fail just on that wave. So really avoid floor 9 if you can. It's not a good floor for farming. Floor 8's not bad. It's a 200 speed, so you're definitely faster. You need a little more accuracy and a little more resistance, but they're still manageable-ish numbers. And honestly, a lot of the good champions against the Fire Knight are the proper affinity because floor 8 is force. And so there's a lot of good spirit champions and a lot of good force champions against the Fire Knight. Now, not everyone is spirit or force. There's a couple magic champions. Obviously, void champions are just fine. You're still at an 18 hit shield there as well, making floor 8 viable and attainable for most people. Floor 10 is really, really difficult though. You have a 21 hit shield and the boss goes at 250 speed, which means that it is very hard to lap the boss. At least at speed 200 on floor 8, there's a good chance with things like a good aura and increased speed, you might even be able to lap the boss or get close enough to lap the boss, or you might get 2 turns every once in a while. So without controlling the boss's speed and increasing your own speed and with an aura and controlling the turn meter, it is really hard to lap the boss or to keep the boss under control when he's going 250 speed. On top of that, you definitely need a 350-ish accuracy, 450 resistance if you're planning on resisting. If he's going to take a turn, that's something to consider. But overall, the stat requirements on Hard Fire Knight are absolutely nuts. The good news is that floor 6, very attainable. Floor 2, very attainable. Floor 8's not too bad. Floor 10 is really, really tough. But I've got a couple of teams that we're going to work on, and I'm going to show them to you. And they're mostly going to be floor 10 teams, but I'll show you what you can do to scale them to floor 6 if you can't hit some of the stat requirements or if you don't have the same champions I do. And meanwhile, I'm also going to show you one of my floor 6 teams on my alt as well, which is a much more accessible team. So let's get into it. So first we're going to start off with my alt. We're going to start off with Fire Knight 6, and this is my team for that. I've got Ralzavarg, because he's got a good A3, does a lot of speed increasing, can be very helpful. Lana Tharl, who is a fusion, so is Ralzavarg. Both very accessible champions from the, if you've been playing for a while. Lanatharl does the ally attack and also brings a shield to the party, which is very helpful for the waves for keeping survive. Farrakhan the Fat is one of the best ally attack epics, if not the best ally attack epic. Stag Knight is a very, very good champion. He brings your decreased attack, your decreased defense, and a decreased speed on his A1, which makes him very, very useful against the boss. And then finally, Gnut, who's honestly one of the MVPs of Fire Knight. If you don't have a Gnut, you can certainly use champions like Yakarl. You can use Crodian the Blue. You can use Pan. You can use Neldor. There's several freeze champs you can use. And if you're short one freeze champ, you may end up wanting two freeze champs. So if you can't build a team like this because you don't have a Gnut, maybe instead of Rosalvarg, you might swap out a Crodian the Blue and a Yakarl for Gnut, and you can still build a decent team. The other option is to simply go with, I'm not going to bother controlling the turn meter as well. And for teams like that, I actually have another video called the Fat Bront. I will try to link it up here. And check that one out if you're looking for a team that does not bother controlling the turn meter. You require a Valkyrie for that. You're going to require somebody like a Mithrala or some other cleanser. You're going to want multiple hitters as well. Cold Heart is actually very key to that team as well. It's still a very viable team. You can run the team for about 3 minutes. I've just built one very recently, but we're going to talk a little bit about teams that are going to control the turn meter fairly well and use Gnut or champions like Gnut. So in this team here, we've got the different rounds too. So the goal is in round 3 is to set it up so that your team does exactly what you want them to do. This team is not planning on getting hit, so this team is immediately going to go into round 3 doing the Finest Hour, which is Lanatharl's ally attack, and Beatdown, which is Farrakhan's ally attack. So they're going to save them in round 1 and round 2. Stag Knight is going to lead off with his A1 because we really want to get this decreased speed up as soon as possible. So between the ally attacks and then Stag Knight taking a turn, we get this decreased speed out, hopefully, because he'll have 2 or 3 different shots of landing it with the ally attack and then with another A1 on top of it. So if he doesn't land it the first time, he'll land it hopefully the second time. And then finally, Gnut, we're going to lead off with his A1 as well to, again, to bring the shield down and to get some turn meter control because he's bringing the freeze on the turn meter as well, and freeze knocks the turn meter down on the hard Fire Knight. And then we're going to let him do his Blessed Bash whenever he can. We don't need the Weaken. Weaken would be nice to add a little more damage, but honestly, I want to make sure that if the shield comes back up, I'm not using this to just do one hit, and I want to do this turn meter control as much as possible. So this is a distraction. The Weaken might be nice. It might speed things up a little bit if you have the turn meter under great control, but it makes it harder to control the turn meter because that means 1 out of every 3 turns, Gnut is not doing his A1. So that's important. I really recommend not turning this on for the boss. For the waves, this is great. Run this on as much and follow. In fact, for the waves, you'll see I have this as the #1 skill because it's an AoE. It hits pretty hard. It gives him some protection with the counterattack as well. Stag Knight, we're using his Huntmaster, which is the decreased attack as well as the decreased defense. This makes the waves a lot easier to deal with by giving the decreased defense. And then the decreased attack is if they do get a chance to attack you, they're not necessarily going to one-shot your team. So I have them starting off on round 1, round 2. We've got him, in fact, I can put that here as a normal choice. But round 1, he does it once. It does not do it again, so it's ready for round 2, and he can get it out as quickly as possible. Fat Man, we don't have him do his beatdown on round 2. On round 1, he leads off with it just because it does a little extra damage, and it's a good way to get through round 1 pretty quickly. Lanatharl, very similar issue. We're not using his Finest Hour on round 2. We're using it on round 1. Meanwhile, he's going to prioritize using this area of attack that's an AoE and also throw shields up. So it's a 3-turn shield on a 3-turn cooldown, so it actually gives you an awful lot of survivability, which is one of the reasons I really like Lanatharl. Other champions that work very well in here, though, are like a Lady Mikage, for example, can be used to stun the waves, which is another form of controlling them. So if you get Mikage to transform and do her stun on round 1 and round 2, that makes her great for keeping those under control. And then in round 3, she can go right into her ally attack. And then finally, Rosalvarg. I wanted to save an AoE for the second round, and again, for extra survivability, getting the leech out there. So he saves this he does this on the first round, and if he has to go around and do it again, that's great, because he slowly but surely increases his own damage by increasing his speed every time he casts this increased speed. And then in this round, we lead off with this Knight of the Rabbit, and we hit with the Knight of the Rabbit a little more often, partially because that means there's a good chance that we might have this mostly off of cooldown for the third round. Third round, he's going to lead off with his triple hit A1. That also gives him the turn meter. We're also going to do the increased speed, which also does a decent smack. And we're turning Knight of the Rabbit off because either we want the increased speed to go up from this ability, or we want him to get his turn meter filled by each hit. So he's adding 15% to his own turn meter every hit, which means he's going to get around to his A1 more often, which also means he's going to get around to this a little more often. So that's how we build this particular team. Let's run it against the Fire Knight and go see how this works. All right, and we're on the Fire Knight. 1 minute in, Razelvarg does his A1 to start off with. Then we should have the ally attacks, getting to the shield. Already down to 6 attacks with the shield here. Lanatharl does his ally attack, and we're through the shield, and we got Stag's decrease speed already. Stag's going to hit again in case he didn't get that. And Gnut does the decreased speed, and we have 0 turn meter on the Fire Knight. And from here, it's just a matter of beating him down a little bit. Gnut will keep the turn meter under control because he's got the increased speed, and the Fire Knight's decreased speed is enough for Gnut to lap him at least once. And once he laps him, as long as he's able to get in an A1, he keeps the turn meter under control. And we basically need to keep the turn meter under control until Gnut gets an additional one of his A3s, where he gets his Blessed Bash and manages to do a ton of damage against the boss. So, the rabbit keeps the speed up particularly well. It's good. Everyone's doing a decent amount of damage. We get the ally attacks as well to help control the turn meter. And at this point in time, we might even kill him without getting a Blessed Bash by Gnut. Not quite. There we go. Gnut didn't even have to get around to a second Blessed Bash. 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Now, I've got a beast of a PC, so this runs particularly fast on me, so that helps a bit as well. But 57 turns, and overall, this is a pretty reasonable team. Having looked at the stats with the other one, I have very few champions that are over 300 speed. Most of them around, 270 to 250. Overall, fairly reasonable stats. A lot of people built for damage. You do have to make sure that you have enough survivability on your Razelvarg so that he doesn't die against the waves. That's part of where Lanatharl in bolster helps quite a bit. I don't think I have anybody in regeneration, or not regeneration, but in... I don't think I have anybody... Yeah. I don't think I have anybody in Relentless. Fat Man is in just general gear, Razelvarg's in general gear, Lanatharl's in bolster, Stag is in general gear, and Gnut's in general gear as well. So Relentless or Reflex gear would be great on some of them, and in fact that actually works very well with this style of team. It does not work very well with a team that's going to be going a second time, and I'll show you that when on my other account. So we're on my main account here, and we're talking Fire Knight 10 now. It is worth keeping in mind, however, that if you cannot hit some of these speeds, this team as constructed will generally work on Fire Knight 6 as well. You do need to keep in mind how fast that boss is. So if you are trying to lap the boss, you want to get to a speed of around 300 to lap the boss on Fire Knight 6, because his speed is 150. Obviously, when you are at 250, it's a lot harder to lap the boss. So I've got Padraig and Farrakhan here for ally attacks. Padraig is a great champion for this boss. He gives you, in addition to the aura, which is a 25% aura, he also has an increased speed. Mine happens to be very fast because I also use mine in arena. He does not need to be this fast. This team worked when he was as slow as 288. So, however, this team cannot have a Padraig or a Farrakhan the Fat in Relentless, because what happens is if they take an extra turn on this round, for example, he does his A1, and then he would do his ally attack. He does the ally attack too early into the shield, and then it's not ready when he actually gets a chance to get hit the second time, and everything falls apart. So you do have to be careful with who you put in Relentless in a team like this. Now, putting a Gnut in Relentless, that would be okay. Putting a Stag in Relentless, that would be okay. Even a Valkyrie in Relentless wouldn't be too bad. But overall, Relentless could cause problems, especially if they get a lot of turns and buffs fall off of them and things like the shields that they need to protect themselves. So you have to be careful with Relentless in a team like this. And otherwise, it's is about setting things up and getting through the waves to the boss. I'm not going to show you the waves. They're not super important other than making sure that the Weird Spores is ready to go. That is Podreg's ally attack. This is a cleanse with an increased speed. That's another reason Podreg is great for this, is he can cleanse off the decreased speed and the decreased defense that you'll get hit with by the boss. And then on top of that, his A1 has a chance to reset skills. It's great. It makes this a lot easier. So we have him waiting one turn to do his weird spores. We have the Fat Man waiting one turn to do his beatdown. Valkyrie, who's at 314 speed, but honestly, as long as Valkyrie is faster than the boss, you're fine. Having her a little bit faster, like this 300-ish speed, is great, but she can be as slow as about 270 if you wanted to, and she would still go before the boss and get this stand firm ready to go. And basically, she needs to be going ideally just before the boss to make sure that she has the shield and the counterattack up, so when the boss takes a turn, you're not dying because you have her big shield up, and you've also got the counterattack up to help whittle down the shield. Stag Knight, again, does very similar stuff. We're going to lead off with the A1. Same with Gnut. We're going to lead off with the A1, do the Blessed Bash as much as possible. So I'll run this up, and I'll catch up with you guys at the boss. All right, so about a minute 15 into the boss. And A1, A2, A1, A1, A1. As you can see, we're not even very far into the shield. Boss takes a turn, and we get a bunch of counterattacks. So there's 17, 15, 12. All right, so now we're going to have Podreg do his ally attack, and that should be another 10-ish hits into the shield. Shield is all the way down to 2. Valkyrie does and clears the shield because she's a little faster than Fat Man at this point in time. Fat Man does his ally attack, and we got the decreased speed by Stag, and we've got the turn of the turn meter control from our little dwarf friend. So now we're just going to keep on pounding on the boss. Now, we only have the one Gnut, and he is not quite fast enough, so you know, he just got his Blessed Bash up, got partial of the way through the shield, or not through the shield, but through the champion, but he's going to get another turn right here, and that's fine. Although it's getting kind of close, but at some point in time, he'll catch up. He'll heal a little bit, which is fine. We've got a couple of counterattacks up, but we've got both of our ally attacks back up as well. So now we got another ally attack, and we're almost through the shield. Podreg should be taking another turn shortly. Get another attack to the shield. We already have the decreased speed out as well, so we're not as worried about getting the decreased speed out. Gnut takes control of the turn meter, gets another Blessed Bash in, and now we're just cleaning up. So we should be able to do just enough damage to finish up the boss, and we're all good to go. Now, it is important to note that the formation is really important in these teams because you'll see we've got Podreg, we've got Fat Man, we've got Valkyrie, we've got Stag, we've got Gnut in that order, as you can see. And this is the order that they counterattack in if all of them are hit. This is also the order they ally attack in. So when Podreg does his ally attack, he attacks, Fat Man then attacks, then Valkyrie attacks, then Stag Knight, and then Gnut. So the order is very important in these teams. That's why Gnut brings up the rear, because Gnut needs to hit last because you want his A1 to be hitting through the shield, not into the shield. Same with Stag. You want him a little further back, but his A1 is not as important as Gnut's because Gnut's is chunking down the turn meter. Valkyrie doesn't add anything for the A1. Fat Man technically can do a decreased defense on the A1, but we've got that with Stag, so it's not super important. Podreg's not doing anything that he doesn't do anyway with his A1, so it's fine if he hits there as well. So let's go take a look at a double Gnut team. And as I've mentioned before, the speeds are very difficult, so this will give you an idea of what kind of speeds you need for a double Gnut team. This one here, Podreg is the only champion that is super absurdly fast, and he doesn't need to be that fast. Everyone else is 300-ish or less speed. Some of that is also from the live arena bonuses, so I've got several of those. I think I've got plus 12 on my speed there, so that helps some of the champions as well. Overall, it's a little stat hungry to get through 12, but or stage 10, but with the Valkyrie and 2 ally attackers, it's very doable, and 3 minutes and 4 seconds on 83 turns is not a bad team. So let's take a look at the double Gnut team, however. All right, so this is my double Gnut team. Not a lot of difference. Obviously, Padraig is great because you're getting an additional 25 speed for the speed aura here. Fat Man is very good for this. I did have to swap out for Tomb Lord. Tomb Lord has a 3-hitter with a 100% decreased speed. That not being 100% for Stag Knight, as well as only being a 2-hitter for Stag Knight, is enough to make a difference as to whether this team works or not. And that's just to give you an idea of how tough this team is to build. Basically, with this extra 1 hit that he gets on 2 different attacks, that is 1 or 2 extra hits that Gnut is getting with his A1 that's controlling the turn meter. And so in this team, ultimately, the Fire Knight is not getting another turn, but you need to be really, really, really fast. Again, Padraig is 350-ish speed, Fat Man's 307, Tomb Lord's 294. This Gnut is in Relentless, and this is only 251, and then this one's in just general gear, and that's 267. It does also help that he's in Relentless, but it's not required for this team. It just does speed it up occasionally. My Tomb Lord, I believe, is actually in lethal gear because I had lethal gear well enough to build this to add additional damage. He doesn't need to be, but he does need crit rate. And as you can see, my crit rate is way overkill for what I needed for this here. Tomb Lord specifically brings this poison for the waves. That can do a lot of damage, helps quite a bit. And then he's got the decreased attack and decreased defense. It's a 4-turn cooldown instead of a 5, and he doesn't actually hit during it. So during the waves, Stag actually helps a little bit because he does a little more damage against the waves with an AoE. But this has turn meter control, still has the decreased attack and decreased defense. Plus he brings the poisons as well. So Tomb Lord brings an awful lot for clearing the waves as well. But overall, we've got Padraig leading off with his weird spores and then increasing everyone's speed as well. We've got Fat Man leading off with his beatdown. We've got Tomb Lord leading off with his A1 because I want to make sure I get that decreased speed out there. And then both Gnuts are going to do A1 just to make sure the Fire Knight is under control. So we're taking no precautions with this. This team has to hit very well. And to be fair, there is a very, very small chance that this team can fail. And usually the failure rate means that the Gnuts got resisted multiple times on their A1s, not managing to control the turn maker. And then the Fire Knight takes a turn and knocks somebody out. Sometimes I can survive a turn, sometimes I can't. So it's a minuscule fail rate, but it can happen. So let's go run this team and take a look. I want to hop in here on the waves quickly just to acknowledge one of the problems with Fire Knight 10 is you've got this Riho over here. Riho will reflect the first set of debuffs that she gets. So if you saw right when I started, Tomb Lord had a bunch of poisons on him because he led off with some poisons and she reflected them back on him. That's where Padraig is helpful because he throws back he does a cleanse. So we get to the boss here, and Padraig goes first and does his ally attack, and we're at 21. That should get us down to 10. Fat Man will now do his attack, and that should get us through the shield. In fact, we got a couple of hits against the shield, which is great. Tomb Lord does his decreased speed. One Gnut does his A1. This Gnut will do his A1, and you look, we've got the turn meter down to just under 50%. Now this is where Padraig comes in, boosts the speed again. We get a few more turns going, and another A1. And, oh good, he got an extra turn. So, but you can see here the turn meter has been difficult to control. We're struggling to keep it down, and we really need the Gnuts to be going, and the double Gnuts really need to be staggering whether or not they're doing their Blessed Bash, or else we're not getting the turn meter under control, because he is really, really fast. And we got another extra turn on this one. That's great, which means we're probably going to finish him off either here or the next time somebody attacks. One of these Gnuts also has the Reaper, so sometimes when he hits, he'll just kill him with the Reaper as well. So that one went faster than the other team, obviously. We ran 48 turns. Best I've done is 1:40 and 40 turns. 2 minutes. This team is significantly faster, and I guess by significantly faster, I say it's 30 seconds to 45 seconds on average faster and shaves off maybe 20 turns, give or take. But there's a lot more risk because all it takes is Gnuts getting resisted a few times or Tomb Lord for some reason getting 3%ed on the decreased speed twice. That can cause a problem. Not getting a lot of the Phantom Touches processing can be an issue. And in fact, one of the things I could certainly do is if I could put Phantom Touch on one or both of the Gnuts, hoping that Phantom Touch with all of the ally attacks triggers enough times to get the shield down and the Gnuts get a couple of extra A1s in. Um, a lot of speed for this team, though, and it's very, very specific to champions like this. Now, it doesn't have to be Fat Man. This could be a Mikage, could be replaced instead of the Fat Man. Padraig is very, very crucial to this team because of what he brings, but if you don't have a Padraig, if you have a Razelvarg will probably work in place of Tomb Lord, but you need to worry about the decreased speed at that point in time. That could be problematic. Cardiel is great as well. Cardiel in place of Padraig would be great. He has the cleanse as well if you need the cleanse for the waves. He doesn't have the increased speed, which is mildly frustrating, but he's got some options as well. He does have a better ally attack, which may help get the shield down, plus he'll do additional damage as well, so he can be great for this. Zenegri Bladebaster can actually help quite a bit, as can Ruella, because they both have an increased speed and a triple hitter and some of the decreased speed debuffs you need as well. So they are options you could use instead of a Tomb Lord if you don't have a Tomb Lord as an option as well, especially if you're struggling to get increased speed. But you need an awful lot of speed with increased speed, decreased speed, the aura, and just fast champions to pull this off. And hopefully you can see that in this team. So Double Gnut's great. Double Gnut makes it fast. Double Gnut is not an easy and instant Fire Knight 10 team. So do keep that in mind. There are plenty of teams with a single Gnut that do very well. And if you don't have a Gnut at all, Fire Knight 6 is still easy to farm if you've got the right ally attackers and the rest of the team. In fact, I built the team with 2 ally attackers, a Stag Knight, a Cruddy in the blue, and a Yakarl, and it ran 3.5 minutes on floor 6 and worked just fine. We had a Mikage, I think, in that team, which made it a lot safer, but there's all kinds of different options for that as well. So there's a lot to deal with Fire Knight. Hopefully this gives you a bit of ideas on teams you can use, champions you can use, some of the speeds you need to go. I do takeovers regularly on Twitch, so go check me out on Twitch Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Links are in my YouTube profile as well, and I'll leave them down below. So hopefully you guys learned something from this. Hopefully this helps you try to tackle Fire Knight. I gave some very specific examples, but hopefully I've given you ideas on other champions you can sub in for these teams, as well as maybe explained how difficult some of this stuff can be, while also making it more accessible to you, because if you have the right champions, you can farm Fire Knight too. So until next time, I'm Bront CatHerder. Much love, guys.